I guess I should actually start the stream instead of just typing in chat. What do you guys think? Would that be a sensible approach? Hi, welcome to a stream. And that was a message. I do have the fan going for this stream. Hopefully it's not too noisy. Maybe you guys didn't even notice at all. My mic is sometimes adept at doing that. But you could probably hear it. Anyway, we're jumping into the Sycora tech map today on this stream. This one might be exceptionally short. I am running on pretty low sleep, but we'll see how it goes. So I already have some notes that have sort of been written down in general. And I have some other like mental notes, you could say, some sub thoughts where I've been thinking about various concepts for the various units, and I figured it makes sense to just plop them in. So as with the previous two streams, I'd like to just do some high concept units. If we can get the Sycora in a position to match the Embra Cyt in some ways, but also the Keltar, and of course the Ansifi is like sort of the creme de la creme currently. That would probably help. Yeah, that would probably make some sense. So if we jump into the Sycora section of all of these different behaviors, all these different folders, and we take a look at our tech map as it currently stands, and then we take a look at the ideas that I've already written down in other aspects of the game, of the note-taking process. So we actually had a couple of ideas from the fans. Neither of them had the idea for a projectile that actually has a positive impact if it passes through allies, and a negative one, obviously, damage if it passes through enemies. It could be one of those things that, like, it is consumed by the first enemy that it hits, but if you can channel it through some allies along the way, that could be kind of interesting. Part of me wants to make it very consistent and make it so that it also enchants enemies, but if it's going to be related to shields, it's really only going to be useful for some regencies anyway, so not 100% sure what's up with that. And then obviously I've got the Chuck's idea written down here for splitting projectiles. He said that splitting incoming projectiles, making armor more effective, would be an interesting choice. I think for the Sycora, instead of that, it'll be splitting outgoing projectiles or enchanting projectiles in some way, because that was already an idea for them. So I'd like to filter this idea through what I already have in place for the Sycora conceptually. And then we have some other units. Actually, this is a concept that I've had for a little while in a couple of different forms. So when the monogram was first put together, shortly thereafter, the concept for this, which back in the day was called the Warp Relay in the Hydra days, the Protoss, specifically the Dark Templar, Icor came up with a unit concept for them, and it was basically like a wayfinder of some sort. It created pathways for other units to follow, so it would basically like carve through terrain and stuff. Obviously, good luck implementing that in Brood War, but I thought the idea was kind of neat. And so I just sort of sat on it for years, probably now. It's probably been 2 or 3 years. And what do you know? The Sycora are perfect for that unit. So I think we'll probably start there, actually. We'll come up with some wacky name, and we'll slap that in as a... I guess it would make sense for it to be a severed unit. It's literally severing terrain. But I guess I could also see an argument for it being an infrastructure unit. We don't actually have that many of those. We actually only have one unit for the Sycora currently, which is just a basic worker. It might behoove us to get a couple extra workers done. But we're sort of riding the line right now between, do we want to focus on super high concept units, or do we want to keep adding to the tiers of tech that we already have? Because obviously from the falsehood, the tier 3 severed units, we only have one of them so far. And so we need some new concepts, maybe a sequel or two. Technically the Ethon is supposed to be the sort of predecessor to the Avranus. So we already have a little bit of that going on. Whereas obviously like the Yinian is a new unit, and the Tylar is a new unit, and the Dynester is a new version of the Tenaton, stuff like that. Emanata was actually successor to both the Exodo and the IOTA, if you guys remember that. And then I think that was it as far as sequels go, yeah. Besides the structures, obviously. So I'm thinking we could probably keep the stuff right here, but keeping in mind that there is room for more severed units, and I guess one more empath unit, theoretically. And if really it comes down to what we want to actually explore in that respect. So yeah. We'll have a think. We'll have a smooch. And I'm thinking at this point, we probably want to dive into that concept that I was talking about earlier, where you can carve units or carve a way through pathways and stuff. I used Sorcoso. I'll probably use Ofcarna later. Let me remind myself what the phonetic passageway here is. So we start out with a consonant or a vowel, and we end with a consonant. That's what severed is. For empath, it's consonant consonant, and for martyr, it's vowel vowel. And here it's consonant vowel for infrastructure, if that matters. That's only a trend of one unit. Sample size of one unit. I didn't really at some point I really should dig through my giant list of notes and grab some of the ideas that I've had here. I'll write some stuff down now that I had written down recently in my big document for words. Loler Man, welcome back. Hope your dinner is enjoyable. Today we're going to be doing high concept Sycora units. Or at least a couple of high concept Sycora units, and maybe some not so high concept ones. It really depends on where we go after the first couple. I'm doing a hilarious process of migrating some unit names from my phone to a notepad document. But I'm mostly just looking for wacky phonetics, because the phonetic rules for the Sycora are all different depending on the branch. I've been doing pretty well with the planning for the campaign. We have the first three missions planned, and a decent number of the characters. I think all of the characters have a little bit of a terse description, and then there's factions, obviously, that I need to elaborate on, and places that I need to elaborate on. But we got something there. So. Oh. This looked almost like Visual Studio Code to me, so I figured, oh, I can use that. So because the Sycoran workers can't assist in building production, we're going to need their workers to be a bit different than other ones. I was thinking that you might still have some idea behind them where it's like buildings warping in near them have increased build speed or something. But I feel like it's more likely that you'll just get, you know, like we have Itera, right? Which is got the second tier carpentry behavior. That's probably fine. Yeah, I wouldn't actually think of... I don't think there's much of a need there. I feel like I used some of these. It's hard for me to remember. Did we ever do mining efficiency? I guess not, because mining time itself is here, right? I guess we don't actually need any abilities. We're just gonna make this one harvest like really quickly. Our ideas for balancing this unit are a little subtle, actually. So, have to think about that one. I'm thinking of an interesting passive for this unit that would somehow interact with. I think we'll actually go with something very, very basic, but the idea, the thematic behind like resequencing and equalizing stuff, which is like related to the flavor text and the weapon name, made me think about a unit that would like. So the Excitralisk has this weird passive with it in Cosmonarchy Brood War, where if its shields are down, it gets life steal, and if its life is low, it gets shield steal. And so when you reduce it to low HP, most of the time you'll be triggering both shield steal and life steal. But it kind of makes you like think about the engagements with that unit in a more interesting way. And obviously allows me to have this unit be powerful without having too high stats. It's a very interesting calling card, I think. The interesting aspect to me about the balancing there is the idea of like some sort of equal balance, some equalizing sort of attack or behavior. And I was thinking that maybe a unit might, like, instead of themselves being the ones to benefit from it, they might tag an enemy, and whoever consumes the stack gets the benefit. Or maybe it would be more like a debuff that while it's active on the target, all attacks would be good for it. That way it wouldn't be like you consume the stack on one enemy unit with one attack from one of your units, because obviously that's very small scale. That's more like a MOBA thing. I could imagine something like it would be a targeted ability or some sort of like, precision-based debuff, or maybe it's like if the weapon goes to the max range or something, something positional. It would proc it, and it would apply a stack to all targets in the area, or maybe just to the one unit. And while that stack was on the unit, maybe it lasts, say, 5 seconds or something, all attacks onto that unit would either heal. It would restore shields if the attacker had less shields than HP by flat value, or it would restore health if it was the other way around, or something like that. I guess maybe it could just give you only shield steal or something. But I like the idea of that equalizing aspect to it. Maybe it could be interesting to push it somewhere where maybe it makes a bit more sense for a gameplay perspective. Because the Sycora are basically all Archons, in that they all have low HP values and high shield values. It's not to the same ridiculous degree that the Archon was in Brood War, but it is It's not so far removed from that. Like that's still a reasonable, like if you think about that, but dialed back a little bit. That's basically what the Sycora have stats wise. So we have to keep that in mind as we're designing their behaviors and units. What's up, Knight of the Realm? Welcome to the stream. Anyway, I figured I would just mention that because it was a thought that I was having. And you know those thoughts. Easy come, easy go. Well, this is a tier 4 unit, so I think it's fine if it ends up having pretty good stats for a worker. I'll leave this vague because I don't actually know what the math would look like, and this might change pretty radically before it's ever implemented. Did you decide to leave after asking a question? Because that's a good prank if so roller skates. Oh, okay. Ah, well, that is a pretty good, yeah, it's a pretty good reply. Very useful. Owned. All right, so I know I said I was going to do a high concept unit. I sort of did, but it's a worker. So It does introduce the mechanic of power-ups, which I'm not really 100% sure if we'll go with. It might just be like whoever kills the unit, whatever player kills the unit gets the corpse. But I think corpses will actually act uh, as power-ups in that sense. But maybe it would be more like specific units have to engage with them. I don't know if that makes it more of a gimmick or less. But in my mind, if it's like a system that you sort of like set up these checks and balances around a system to box in like when it can be used, that can actually make it feel more developed and appropriate than just having a situation where like basically those StarCraft 2 resource things that you would just walk a marine into are dropping from units under certain circumstances. I guess the corpses themselves would be that instead of a deliberate and explicit power up. So I think we would do that. So instead of this like debuffed by Nixata attacks, there you go. That's what we'll say. That's a lot less overhead than introducing a power-up system. And then Veek said he fixed enabled by requiring... Ah, shit. Well, alongside the regencies that I've been working on the tech maps for, I have been doing planning for the actual single-player content, so... that's not really what I wanted to do. That's pretty good. So I have this page over here that goes over the names of the currently thought of projects. And the tutorial, it's not completely fleshed out in that I don't have like the proper nouns section that I do in Symmetry Sickness, but I will add that to tutorial 2, at least at some point, I think. It's probably not that necessary, but whatever. And then there should probably be a wrap-up paragraph at the end of Chapter 4 that I never did for this. But besides that, it's pretty much complete in terms of the planning. And then Chapters 1 through 3 of Symmetry Sickness, the Sycoran campaign, are also planned. So that's what I've been doing when I'm not doing this and still working on Xibalba / Cosmonarchy. I'm not 100% sure where we'll go next. But that's probably going to take at least a month to bang out to get everything up to the same level of the Ancifi for the 6 retail regencies, and to get the upstart ready technology, like basically the first 3 tech tiers of the upstart regencies, which are the Rosellium and the Orlithray. To get those conceptualized will probably take over a month. So I'm not really in any massive rush to move on from this. But I can imagine it probably does get a bit old. I've also been thinking about the benefits of doing the streams in the first place. I think part of it is the accountability and like eventually it will get done, right? So doing it over and over again and maintaining that streak is good for productivity and discipline. But yesterday, I've been doing these offline recordings where I'll talk about my like thought process about the campaign planning and stuff. And I don't have them uploaded anywhere yet. But the idea is that they're there as a way for me to be able to justify speaking out loud into a microphone while planning on this stuff. And that tends to help me articulate some ideas. But yesterday, I didn't do the recording part. And what usually takes me at least an hour, if not longer, to plan out just the mission planning for a mission, like 4 paragraphs for a mission, and shuffle some other stuff around and think about some concepts. When I wasn't recording, so I wasn't talking to myself, I did it in 25 minutes, which is like ridiculously fast comparatively. So I was like, it doesn't really make sense to if it's going to be that drastic of a difference, like surely it would be better to not bother with the whole like recording thing. And then the streaming stuff, I think it's fine, but it does move very slowly. Like it can take us, I think some of my most productive streams, for example, have been where I've added maybe like double digit units, like 10 units or something at one point for maybe the Embra Cyt, maybe. I think I did that maybe once or twice. But those are pretty rare, and even those take 2-3 hours. It probably would take me far less time if I was in the right headspace, I guess is the big caveat, to do that without a recording, without a stream. So at some point I have to think about like balancing that. But I think the stream is good for getting like sort of crowdsourcing some ideas and stuff. I guess at some point we'll probably transition away from the more like daily occurrence streams when things are a little bit further along. And I'll probably just make those weekly update videos that sort of go through the progress updates in terms of concepts and planning and stuff like that. Yeah. It would be nice to be able to, like, one of the things that I do like about it is in the event that we get like some newcomer, which usually happens like once every other stream or so for me, who hasn't heard of the project and is interested, they can ask questions. I can just answer them right then and there. So they can like just sort of throw questions at me and I can reply in real time. But I guess they could just leave a comment if they're inclined enough to ask a question. They can probably do that or join the server or whatever. So I don't think it's a huge loss if we decide to go away from the very frequent, basically daily streams of something related to the project where Veek's doing the engine stuff. I think for the engine stuff, it might make more sense for Veek because I know he can be very productive when he's not streaming, but he doesn't have the same like track record of always working on it day in and day out as I do, where that was actually like the discipline stuff was something that he's been trying to work on, and that's one of the reasons why he's doing the streams in the first place. So but that's why I said like for the foreseeable future it'll probably stay, but it's just something I'm thinking about. And then there's the homies who look forward to being able to pop in every other day to one of these streams, and then on the off days pop into Veek streams, assuming the timing works out. So don't want to leave them by the wayside, but I think these streams will probably end up going by the wayside for me when I pick up some more real work anyway, since my time will not naturally be crunched, and I'll still want to work on. I want to work more efficiently on this, and I also want to work on other things like this campaign video I've been editing and whatever else. I guess if the weapon is not going to be involved in this, we can actually reduce the range slightly. Well, I also just post on the Discord server about all that stuff, but you're one of those weirdos who doesn't join the Discord server, so you don't know what I'm talking about? Noob? Yeah, I know. I just like calling you noob, so. It's mostly just so that people don't get left out, TBH. So we have this worker, this wucker. We can say we're done with that. Oh yeah, I was looking through unit names. Back to that. Ah, wrong folder. I don't think he's started on it recently. but I can ask him about it probably tomorrow or something. I think he's been busy doing some art for his own stuff most recently. Thinking about what I want to do icon-wise for this unit. I'll probably just end up going with like the Anticathon icon or something. Because I want something very bulbous. I could use the biotic base icon, I guess. That's pretty funny. At some point, not so long ago, DF found out the reason why in Cosmonarchy Brood War some custom structures, don't align themselves with the grid. It's because if you want it to align with the grid, your canvas has to be divisible by 32. It's actually pretty easy to fix on an individual asset basis. But because that's fucked for literally every asset, I have very minimal motivation to do it. Because I was like cutting a bunch of unused space for the sake of file size and stuff, thinking I was actually doing a good job. In actuality, I was owning myself. Wave emoji, but I'm on YouTube mobile. There you go. All right. See you later, homie. And welcome another homie, Hoop Thrower. How you doing, dude? I don't know why it has to be divisible by 32 because it has to alpha out the black pixels anyway. So I just didn't really get why Lard did that. But like theoretically, it would actually be easier to just remove the hard code if we knew where it was. But yeah, I don't know. It's pretty dumb. I guess I should actually test to see if Veek was correct about that. But whatever, we'll do that in a sec. I wonder what will happen. I think your units will just get stuck in the fucking rock or something if you leave them. But then at least you can go back and get them. Or like transport them out or something. That's pretty funny though. I don't know how what we'll do about that. Because we could decollide them, I guess, but that'd be pretty bad. Or we could kill them, but that would be even worse. So. I guess we could decollide them into the Andiron's distortion field. So that would probably be fine. Because the Andiron hovers, so it doesn't really matter for the Andiron, but... I guess if you completely untoggle it, they would die. Which would mean... yeah. So then you can snipe the Andiron if you see it moving around. Just fucking annihilate a bunch of units. It moves pretty slowly, too, by default, so... Now that's a high concept unit, homie. So obviously, by the way, the reason why you would want to be able to toggle it is because if you didn't, it would never be able to move up in terrain, in height level. I guess you could. No, yeah, you wouldn't be able to, now that I think about it. So that is why. That's pretty cool, though. And yes, that also does check off the list. Now we know... oh yeah, first of all, I have to link Itera to... Where's B Itera? I have to link this to Nixata. Where are we here? I won't do every single passive or behavior in the whole game, but I will get rid of these ones because they're just really annoying. All right, bit cleaner now. Huh. What else do we want to smash right this second? I was thinking we could do something a bit more frontal, but I'm not 100% sure. So if we go back to the sort of... The ideas that we had were obviously like utilitarian units. Those would be empath. For the sake of like enchanting. And so we would need... I think projectile acceleration could be the last unit in the Testament, actually. We can sort of have the first projectile accelerant. And then for tier 5, we could have a unit with Knight of the Realms idea for projectiles that when they pass through allies, they provide shields. I guess it could just be an overshield no matter what. It would be Sycoran shields, specifically. But that way it can affect non-Sycoran allies, right? Which would be pretty cool. No, the Keltar have shields from their passive, but they don't start with base shields. They actually get max shields, and basically every hit gives them more max shields and gives them base shields equal to the max shields that they just got. So if you've got like an attack that deals 10 damage, you get 10 max shields. If you already had 10 max shields, but those were depleted, you wouldn't get 20 max shields, or you would get 20 max shields, but you wouldn't get 20 shields. You would only get 10 shields. So that sounds kind of complicated when I explain that way, but. Copy that name from Ye Old Empyrean. Even though it does something completely different. So now the only like high concept unit that I thought was quite emblematic that we're missing is the projectile accelerant one, which could probably be a martyr unit. Oh, I didn't give the Rotonin to tier 5 like I intended to. And then obviously I have to link the union to the Rotonin here. And successor. They don't have like the best attack speed, but obviously this is where obviously the splitting projectile thing could be really interesting. Actually, I guess that sounds a bit more like severed. You know, the whole idea of severing something is splitting it into subsequently smaller pieces. That could be a severed unit. I was saying that I was thinking that projectile interference could be something that we play around with in the empath branch as early as tier 3. And I think that's still the case. So what we could do is we could have empath projectile splitting or tampering. It wouldn't be splitting, it would be accelerating, like slowing speed in favor of damage. Or no, slowing speed in favor of armor pen would be the first one. And then the subsequent ones would probably be like AoE potentially, like different specializations that you could have. There it is. Nice feat. Mesk came in with the clutch. Wait, what message? Nice feet? Well, your messages show up in the Discord channel that he posted that message in, so defrauded IMO. I guess he just didn't realize what he was saying nice feet to. Maybe he didn't even read my message and said nice feet anyway. He has been doing that, so I wouldn't actually put him past it. Might just be what happened. Can't name it that. Oh shit! Observance! Wonder if this is an issue with everything. Oh. Weird that I made that thing. I missed the F, so it says crat. That's pretty good. If I was still committing manually, that commit message would just say F. Cool. So we have 4 new additions to the roster for the Sycora. A worker, we got 2 empath units, and we got an Endiron. It's pretty thematic for Severed. Yeah, the question is, where do we go from here? Stream's only been going an hour, and we already did as much, if not more, than the additions from the previous stream, I think, which went for 2.5 hours or something insane. Maybe I'm actually underestimating how many. I think I added a lot more than I think, but I can't remember. Feels like it was so long ago. Okay. That's pretty good stuff. I guess the question is, I should think a little bit about what I want to do regarding the, if we go to the Sycora page, general purpose unspecialized combatants is the call sign of the martyr branch. That's not what I wanted. So I'm not 100% sure where that goes, but... I guess I should add... So the manifest should definitely make... Makes the intrusion twice, apparently. This was obviously supposed to be lay bare, followed by burden, followed by labyrinth. And then for the Itera, remove Itera from the list because it doesn't make itself. And then for burden, we remove Itera because this doesn't work into that, and we're good. Okay, that's good. All right, I will take my patented 1 hour in break and think about the stuff related to the Martyr branch. When I get back, hopefully I have some ideas that we can act on. If not, maybe we futz about with some of the mechanics or some of the other things that we have to do, like maybe some of the other regencies or whatever. And if really nothing comes to me after a little while, I'll just call the stream there. But don't give up hope yet, and don't leave yet. BRB. We back. I came back to some goofy ass track. As usual. Alright, so for a branch of tech called Martyr, they don't really do a whole lot of like on-death effects. I wonder if that will be... Because the on-death effects were kind of reserved in my head for the Avot, but those guys aren't showing up until the very end of the game's development in terms of like adding new regencies. In terms of what we've planned so far. Maybe I'll go to, 30 regencies or something insane. But the point is, yeah, okay. So the point is, I think we could probably use some Martyrous units in terms of death effects. I think maybe we did have something like that. We had the Center, right? Where upon death they distribute their buffs and debuffs. It was a bit different. That's like an added effect on top of the... This is written in a weird way, so I'll fix that. There we go. We'll make it more general as well. All right. But yeah, all of these units are pretty standard fare. Oh, here we go. Yes, the Okeri had a death effect. Okay, so I was wrong, actually. Ah, yes, and the Oenada. The Oenada sparked some interesting responses from people who were kind of like fridge logicking a lot of their reactions, I think. Suffice it to say, I don't think it'll be a problem. So up next, if we wanted to round out the composition for Tier 2 Martyr, and then start building a presumption of what we would have in the future, I guess we don't have any artillery. We have the Odira, and that's it. It's 9 range. It's pretty reasonable. And then I added the Ratonin, which is also 9 range. That might be the longest range stuff we got. Which is respectable, but it's not like massively long range, right? Okay. So we don't need an artillery unit at tier 2, but some sort of artillery unit with interesting behaviors could be kind of interesting. Well, if it's interesting behaviors, it probably is interesting. It could be useful for the Martyr branch. I also kind of like the idea of something like the Union with the Astral Blessing, where it adds a permanent stack to the target. It kind of like turns the enemy into a Martyr. And some may say that should make it in the Martyr branch, but I kind of look at that like the whole idea of what empath means, or what, like an empath is somebody who can empathize, fundamentally. There's like more going on to it than that usually in the way that it's used in common parlance. It's like a mystic or a psychic. But I like the idea of you're almost like making the enemy know what it's like to be a martyr because you're giving the enemy a death effect that's actually beneficial to you, which is kind of interesting. It's a very whack around, sort of like bizarre way of doing it, but I kind of like it. Now, there is the question of whether the Center should actually be like a more complex unit or something for the Martyr branch, but I think the fact that it's kind of meant to die, the Center might just end up getting removed or completely redesigned later. Because the design problems that I have with it are basically the center has this issue where it can be very selectively powerful for enchanting your army. Can also be used as a vector for enemies to disenchant your army if you're positioning them intelligently to benefit from them. They can then use that as an aggressive stance against you. They have a tiny bit of hypervial cost, which is actually quite prohibitive, believe it or not. And they have negligible damage, but it's still like there. It feels like Sinters should probably only copy over buffs. If I wanted to make this unit usable in broad strokes, the unit would have to only copy over buffs and then bestow them to all allies in a radius around them for as long as those buffs are added. And so maybe it would be something like all buffs from this could be like a super high tier version of it. Could be like any buff that is owned by any ally within 5 range is provided to all allies within 5 range. Something like that as an example. It's very wild. You can imagine that being really powerful. But likewise, the sort of vector for disease spreading, if you will, it could be that any debuff, like there's some counterplay to it. And then obviously you could also just focus down the unit. That would transition it more into like a very dedicated specific unit role, though, as opposed to it being a fighter. So I feel like right now the combat idea, like the idea of it being a fighter unit, kind of fights with, no pun intended, the idea of it being this utilitarian buff cloning unit. So those are the main things that I would like to try to fix about the unit at some point. It seems like I'll need to reimagine it. What's up, James? But going back to the Martyrs, I do think some sort of high concept artillery unit is justified, and that could be our 5th high concept unit for the day. And then maybe we round out the tier 2 Martyr branch with another sequel unit, perhaps? I guess it's kind of tough because the reason why I think it's okay, you can get away with 2... oh no, I guess you only have 1 sequel unit for this branch, don't you? Anyway, the reason why I think you can get away with that in this context is because for Empath, there's 2 tiers between them. If there's only 1 tier between them, if it's like subsequent tiers, it feels a little bit worse to instantly have the replacement unit, I think. But maybe that's a false assumption. It's just like my gut reaction is, yeah, probably don't want that. And then there's obviously there's still a big hole in the tech map in terms of the extra units for the Severed branch that we have to account for at some point for tier 3. I actually think this model, though, more broadly speaking, of fleshing out the first couple tiers, it happens to be 3 because 3 is the magic number, of course, and then getting high concept units and structures taken care of in a more abstract sense, where you're working with like things that will define how people see the Regency's strength and their limits and what stands out about the experience of playing as or against them or alongside them as an ally. Those things getting defined super early, and then also having those like that very solid bedrock of like figuring out what the core identity of each branch is using the first 3 or 4 tech, I guess it would be 2 or 3 tech tiers, can be quite useful because that's basically all you would ever need for an upstart faction, and we could probably start working on unit implementation using this approach, which is pretty neat because it's not something you would expect. I don't think, at least, I wouldn't expect to be able to easily go from the conceptual space to the in-game space. But I feel like with something like this, it's actually quite serviceable because you could play games where you can at least tech up to tier 3, tier 4, whatever, and field a decent number of units. You already have more units planned for the Sycora than there were for any race in StarCraft 1, for example, or even Warcraft 3. If we count out the units, just the units, mind you, we have what, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. Yeah, it's 23 units. So, I mean, that's nothing to scoff at. If we bang out that other high concept unit and the last unit for the martyr branch, that would be 25. I wasn't struggling to do the math there. I was trying to think about where I was going with that. Oh yeah, if we have that many units already planned for the Sycora, there's not really much of a reason to worry about like, oh, when can we start implementing these units, even in a basic developer graphics oriented thing. Yeah, I think this is coming along quite well, actually. It's deceptively well, because maybe I only make a little bit of progress here and there, but it all adds up eventually. That's the incremental, slow and steady wins the race kind of mentality aspect to doing these streams all the time. So, let me go name hunting again for a couple of units. That is a headline. That sounds like they desperately need more workers. Yeah. You know, that doesn't surprise me. I guess we don't have that many air units. We should probably get a couple of those. Maybe that could be the artillery unit. Could be a mega air unit. Like one of the first non-fighter class units that they have. And I guess we still don't have a transport. I guess that could also be the tier 2 reliquary unit, now that I think about it. How would I handle harassment in the workplace? I feel like my teams would never get big enough that I wouldn't be able to witness an obvious downstream effect of something happening, even if it wasn't reported directly to me. Because when people are being harassed in the workplace, their productivity's going down, they're feeling depressed. Just by talking to them, usually you can tell that they're stressed out, like something is different. And because it just so happens to work out that everybody who's working with me on the content that we're producing here also happens to be a close friend, or at least a friend. I talk with them on a regular enough basis that if something's bothering them, I can usually figure it out based on their tone of voice or the way that they talk, or maybe they just tell me because we're tight like that. So thankfully, I'm in a position where I don't really have to worry about all of the normal issues that you run into when you're dealing with workplace harassment. Because usually that stuff needs to be explicitly reported because there aren't those like more human aspects of, oh, what's going on here, and I noticed you were just feeling dour, so there's something you want to talk about, that kind of thing. There's not as many guarantees that kind of self-correcting aspect of the whole process is going to even be good there. Like it might not happen, right? I imagine in most big companies it doesn't happen, and that's where you get stories about or anecdotes about like everybody in the office had some unreported case that they just didn't bother putting up because they felt it was trivial or they didn't feel safe doing it or for whatever reason. So that's why I think you need to stress like I think it's a cultural thing, and if you don't support it in a cultural sense, if you take the time to get to know the employees that you're working with that are working under you as a director or a CEO or whatever, when you have enough people doing those kinds of hands-on approaches to management, you're not going to need to rely on the self-reporting aspect nearly as much. That's been my experience anyway. And again, obvious caveat being it's with a very small team. If there's some problem, usually it comes up in conversation and it gets resolved, or at least earmarked for future resolvement later on, for future resolution later on. Because you basically just say, oh, this isn't working. I'm feeling upset about this or whatever. And you just, you make it work. So you talk it out like adults, basically. Yeah, I most certainly wouldn't be. I wouldn't be smearing shit all over the bathroom walls, nor would I accept that kind of behavior. But I would count that as workplace harassment to everybody involved, actually. Oh shit, that's a message. Custom emoji get fucked by restream. Unsurprisingly. I guess if they were next level, they could filter that out into a PNG and post that, but don't know how they would do that. Probably too much to ask of any fucking JavaScript platform. You can't even ask for 5 nations to launch without crashing 10 seconds into the main menu, so it's over. Anyway, I was in the middle of... I had a name! God damn it, I forgot to write my name down. Oh, I sort of remember. I don't think that was it, actually, but it's a better name than what I remember, so... Whatever. I did? Tell me which one it is, homie. That was a concept I had for the Sycora back before I was even streaming the development of this stuff, so probably 2 months ago. I knew specifically I wanted the Sycora to have fast-moving attacks that don't have a lot of armor pen, and don't have a lot of frontal damage either. And so I wanted some sort of way to interact with projectiles. It was something that I knew, like, I basically wanted to have a bunch of different ways to hint at the idea, well, not really hint, to outright say that they are from another reality, where they have, like, technology that just, like, creates these fields, these pocket dimensions of their home reality, where shit works differently. And they have, like, more control over the elements there and stuff, so it's kind of interesting. I also think we'll probably have some sort of, like, audio filter or missing audio filter in the processing, where when you have your units inside distortion fields, they will have the full sound staging of the Sycoran voice processing, but they won't have, they'll have some layer that like makes it feel like there's something missing or muffled in some way slightly. I don't want it to be too annoying, obviously, but the idea is to demonstrate that they are missing a part of themselves when they're operating in 3-dimensional space. And so losing out on some aspect there would be pretty, I think it would be pretty thematic if you, like, have created these pocket dimensions from various um, distortion fields, depending on which unit it is. The Nostaroon or the Andiron. And any of the other numerous ones that we'll add later. I think that'll be pretty good as a way to demonstrate what I'm all about here, what I'm talking about. At some point, I'll probably try to come up with more consistent and still good sounding prefixes and suffixes for some of these units. The language rules are all over the place. You got the consistent linguistics of like consonant vowel or vowel vowel or consonant consonant or vowel consonant, but if it were a little bit more, if I knew what these words actually meant, I think it would be better, even if it was just for me. But it's hard to say that kind of stuff. You never know. Oh, I don't know if I can't remember if I even wanted. I didn't really want Sycora to have more conventional transport craft, I don't think, but I guess it makes sense that they would need it in the three-dimensional space that they're working within, so that's probably fine, actually. False alarm. This is still a pretty high concept unit. Because of the passive I'm about to write. Oh shit. I actually meant not to be that. Which StarCraft campaign are you referring to? I've been working on birthday projects for a while. I'm pretty sure a fly just tried to fly into my nose, idiot. Anyway, you can find that stuff here. Very good header. I'm very proud of that. There's 4 chapters released and 2 more planned. Obviously, they're being designed and released on people's birthdays. So. These images are pretty amazing. IMO. But you were probably thinking of the campaign planning that was on this page, which was more serious, and it featured a reimagining of the StarCraft races. Unfortunately, StarCraft's engine is too limited to do what I wanted to do with that. So when we build up Antikythera a bit more, I'll just make content for the retail game, the full game of Cosmonarchy. And we'll move on into the new setting instead of bothering with Blizzard's nonsense that I had to rewrite anyway in order for it to be serviceable. And even then, obviously, there's some inalienable problems. Inalienable? Yeah. Yeah. You're probably thinking of like Stellar Forces, which Blizzard took down because it was too bad. Ah, shit. I was trying to set it to suborder 4, or no, tier 2 suborder. Yeah, that's actually correct. I just had it set to the wrong tier for some reason. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's highly illegal because mods are not meant to be profitable whatsoever. That's pretty funny though. It wasn't my intention for this to look like and iron. So I will just rename it in as andiron, which is more closer. It's close enough to how I was pronouncing it earlier. I guess it could be andiron. I think I'll do andiron, but we'll see. That's close enough. So the other unit that we wanted to add before we get out of here was a high concept artillery unit. I was thinking that the projectiles could actually gain damage over time traveled, similar to the Gazithalor gains damage over distance traveled. In this case, it would be time, and then you would benefit from passing it through those distortion fields. So that could be pretty neat, actually. I quite like that idea. So we'll do that. Let's take the Erodi, I suppose. Don't have a name for it yet. There was an Ansifi unit that had a similar behavior to what I was just describing. Oh, it was movement speed. Okay. And yeah, that enabled by bug is there for everything, unfortunately. So we'll do... That's very wordy. I'll probably rename it later. Maybe it could be AoE instead, but... yeah, it'll probably end up being AoE instead, but we'll call it this for now. Oh shit! I don't want to become famous! Instant, by the way. More like by the way. I guess I should take a look at the Ansifi weapons. Missile singular. That probably makes more sense, since he might only launch one missile. So it's more consistently correct. Hi, Rawflesh, how are you? The mod is fine, but we have not been working on it recently. I'm working on my own setting instead. I guess we can keep it as air. Oh shit. I forgot it doesn't actually delete those messages in such contexts. Oh, I forgot to give it the icon I picked out for it. Oh man. Where's that icon? It is 441. Obevire. Well, there you go. Goat seeing website, by the way. Jesus. That's a good one. A goat one, if you will. All right, so we got our 25 unit concepts fully stocked and locked and ready to rock, sir. That's some Legacy of the Confederation line where a guy says, "Stocked, locked, and ready to rock, sir." And it destroyed me every time. All right. Okay, I think we're good. I think job's done. Cosmonarchy is meant to make you actually play an RTS, so it does not surprise me that people have some difficulty with it. Most mods and campaigns don't actually make you play an RTS in order to win. Which is unfortunate, because I would like to not be the only one. You know how it goes. Yeah. Can we do like a temperature check here? Can we stop calling games that are difficult Dark Souls? Can we not do that? Can we not do the Dark Souls of X genre? That would be nice. If we could stop doing that, that would be great. Because Dark Souls doesn't achieve organic difficulty. So if somebody who actually knows what Dark Souls is and understands it says that something that I have made or somebody else has made is like Dark Souls, I would take that as an offense. I would take that as a grave insult. Because I would assume that that means that they believe that whoever has made the product has deliberately designed animations to be so sluggish and add input delay and all this other stupid shit that's just there to design. It's literally designed to make you lose. Now, anybody who likes Dark Souls is going to listen to this and think, this fucking guy is so bad, is such a noob, he couldn't even beat Dark Souls, he's just salty because he's mad. I have no real emotional attachment to Dark Souls specifically, but I'm just calling it like I see it. Like, the animations are slow. The way to win the first game is just to roll around, as far as I can tell. But that's one of the games. I can't remember which one it was. Everybody hates the second game, but that was the most game of them all, whereas all the other ones were like prank. Although I guess the third game was theoretically an improvement on the formula, but the second game was definitely better than the first game in terms of the number of systems that I, as a probable noob, could actually employ to defeat my enemies. But even that game had a ton of issues with animation timings and invincibility frames and all this stuff. So the plebs use Dark Souls as an example of a game that's difficult, but they don't really understand what difficulty is. If they did, they wouldn't use Dark Souls as the example. I guess the trouble is I have a hard time thinking of an example. I'd probably have to think of like shmups or something, or Brood War 1v1 against a Korean. That's difficult. Huge RTS conversation or a campaign story? I don't know what that question means, dude. This will be the Q&A section, the shit talking section of the stream. We talking some shit, homies. Yeah, well, he basically shills it wherever he goes because he's obviously just doing like a. I have updated this campaign score. It is now 87% from 86%. It's like, okay, thanks. Very useful. You sure did give me a reason for it. You sure? Like, even if I was, like, say analyze it from a super cynical point of view, I'm a Star-Rated Crusader. That's really hard to imagine already. I can't say this without laughing. I'm a Star-Rated Crusader. I don't even like SCM Draft 2, man. I don't even like Brood War, man. I'm a Star-Rated Crusader. I think that Chris is doing a great service by giving my campaign that I made in a weekend an 85 out of 100 or whatever. If I'm ever trying to improve, how is any of his content useful for me? He just like says a couple of lines in his spreadsheet, from what I can tell, and then nothing. I mean, he rated Vision of the Future overwhelmingly positive, like 83, 4 or 5% or something crazy. I don't remember the exact percentage. It was in the 80s, I think. I actually have not seen. Oh yeah, I guess I have seen that technically, where he said stuff like, "This campaign had the following issues, holding it back from receiving a higher score." Or something. It's like, man, I feel like those kinds of posts were probably back before he got annihilated at CC. He claims that he's banned, but I don't know if that's even true. I think he's just like, he got BTFO'd by Ybod posting about the Marvel Infinity War or what was it? Cinematic Universe, where he's just like, that was a good thread. Anyway, the good news is when I make my own setting, maybe this isn't the case actually. I believe I will leave most of these weirdos, these maladjusted individuals who invest way too much time into StarCraft content and debating like how good terrible products actually are and all that stuff. I can leave them behind. I just be like, I got my own stuff. I got my own stuff, guys. I'm too busy. I can't look at your shit campaign. I'm sorry. I'm too busy. I can't do it. Can't wait for that to be the case. Yeah, maybe he's self-banned. That's the only thing I can think of. Anyway, I think that session's over. I'm out of here. It's been real. We did a couple of unit additions. What was that, 6 units? That's pretty good. I'll take that. That's more than I thought I would get done in not even 2 hours. So don't self-ban yourself and don't die. And I'll see you guys in the next stream.